So first speaker for today, who very kindly agreed to open the day for us, is Stevie Wishart. So Stevie is an English composer, improviser and performer on the hurdy-gurdy and medieval violin. She was educated at Cambridge, Oxford and the Guildhall School of Music, studying composition and electronic music at the University of York, where she specialised in composition, electronic music, ethnomusicology and medieval music. With Vicente Canada Blanch Fellowship at the University of Oxford, she researched representations of medieval music in the visual arts, taking Spain and the Mozarabic world as the main focus. It is from this initial study of iconography that an involvement in multimedia contexts for her music performance developed. Formative hands-on time was also spent following contact with John Cage and David Tudor while playing at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and with traditional fiddle players in Istanbul and Rajasthan, as well as studying the hurdy-gurdy with Valentin Clastrier in central France. So Stevie, the floor is yours.
So that introduction, actually, I'm not sure where it came from, but it doesn't actually have much to do with what I've been doing in the last 15 years. But nothing of mine is on the web. I actually put there myself. So it's kind of, I guess that's what came up. But it was nice because it made that medieval connection. Like this. Okay. It made that medieval connection, which is quite relevant, not only because of what Veronica was just saying with that beautiful illuminated manuscript, but, and I only thought about it till I heard that introduction, because the medieval stuff was a long time ago, but as we know, back then, everything did relate so much more. And as we've gone through medieval Renaissance, you see this in music very much, but you see it in most manners of thinking. We've become increasingly pigeonholed. So actually that medieval link is a rather resonant one, really. So I didn't talk very much because I'm a composer, but I will try and share with you aspects of what I've been doing over the last 3 years, when I felt that, as so many artists did, that it just felt like a total natural extension of my creativity to do something to do with the environment and actually try and make experiments with nature in order to embody that in my work. And I didn't really think about it. I just realized that I was working in studios, concert halls, interior spaces, and I was escaping out of them into nature in order to pause in my work. And I felt very at home there. And then one day I thought, this is wrong. Why don't I actually just move into nature, and that is where I work, and find a way to make nature what I do. And this happened about a couple of years before COVID. So I went to the Ardennes, and I kind of stopped doing concerts and going into concert halls and just stayed there and kind of saw what happened as a series of experiments. So fast forwarding now and to yesterday when I was asked to do this talk, I had a Zoom session yesterday also with David Haskell. I don't know if you know him. He's Professor of Biology and Environmental Studies at Southern University. And we just had a research grant, of which I'm the artist in it. It's centred at Bath Spa University, and he's part of the network. So this was the very first talk that we'd had, and it felt so right to do that here. And so I asked him, his book, Sounds Wild and Broken, is coming out in the States next week, and he's going to send us a copy to Britain. I was asking him what would he do in terms of what his work was doing if I was in my role in this project. It's called Ecotones Soundscape for Trees. And my idea is quite simply, how can we make us more aware of trees through listening? And music is a very good conduit to actually give us the vocabulary for how to listen, because we can actually build on a tradition, on a didactic, pedagogical tradition, about actually how to do this. And although we've applied it to diatonic music in the West, it can actually be really well applied, I think, to listening to our environment. And that's what I'm hoping will come out of this network, and what I hope I've been able to do, scratching the surface recently. So I asked him just some thoughts about where we could start with this, and he said wood. He said violins. He didn't actually know at that stage I was a violinist. So can we play the first sound extract? It begins very softly. It's there. That's it. There is, it's just soft. And then can you play the second? This is a bit further into that same piece. So when we're seeing that, David was pointing out, when we're seeing and listening to that, we're seeing a lot of wood, and we're seeing a lot of wood that's old generally, it's been recycled. We have to upgrade ourselves to the hardware. So we're seeing something that's actually very sustainable. In this case, they're probably quite expensive musical instruments, but they needn't be. They can be junky old fiddles. We tend not to throw them away. We tend to keep them. We tend to repair them. So he made the very simple statement that just by making us think of wood, this could be a way to start this. So I just thought I'd start with that, since that was what we talked about yesterday. And then I had at that stage, I wasn't thinking about making my music resonate with living in nature and having a kind of environmental conscious, if that's the word, to my music. But David just pointed that out as it's a good way to start. It's just making us think of the wood. And in that beginning, the players are actually touching the wood. The audience can see this. So the instruments don't really sound like musical instruments. They actually sound like bits of wood. And they also, so that's something that also brings it back to the players, that they're actually touching rather special bits of wood. So that might make them value them. Then I came to a much more obvious link with natural phenomena that make sound. And like many composers through many hundreds of years, I chose birdsong. Well, no, I didn't choose birdsong, actually. Birdsong chose me. So I was just coming out of the vets with my cat, and the phone rang, and it was someone from the BBC Proms who wanted, as composers, you do a prom every kind of 3 or 4 years, and they had a theme in 2019. And it was to ask 4 composers, I think it was, to add an extra movement to Bach's suite. So it was a Bach night, nothing to do with what I was thinking about. And they said, could I do add an extra movement to Bach's Overture in C major, which is a dance suite. And the only limit they gave me was it had to be a dance. So I thought, oh my gosh, I've just made this kind of move to the environment in birdsong, and now I've got to do something that fits with Bach. But then I thought, but actually that's a really nice challenge, because what I always try to do with my music is I kind of opted out of the kind of New York, Berlin scene when it was wonderful, but I was kind of playing to my own kind. And I thought this isn't enough of a challenge. If I want to kind of make people want to play living people's music rather than dead man's music, I've got to go where dead man's music is played, and the Albert Hall's a very good place for that. So I didn't think much of it because I knew I had to get on with composing it. So often what can also happen is if you just trust that what you've been bumbling around doing has had some path, even though you're not sure what it is, which as artists, I'm sure you're all very familiar with that feeling. I just started bumbling. So I decided to have a tango. I had actually missed the fact that you were meant to pick a Bach dance style, so I just picked any dance. So I was a bit more modern than the other ones in the proms, but it was too late because I'd already written it. But so I decided on a tango. And then, of course, I came to Argentina. And then I started looking and thinking, well, is there any connection with birds in Argentina and nature? So then I came across a wonderful film of the hooded grebe. And I found that the sound of the hooded grebe is rather like the seagulls we're hearing. In fact, while I was thinking what I was going to be doing for this talk very early this morning, it was rather nice to hear the seagulls with my hooded grebe recordings. I then came across Paula and Michael Webster, who had done a YouTube video that had gone viral on fitting the tango to the plight of the hooded grebe. Yes, could you go to track 2, number 1? Which is yeah. So what you're going to see now is where I started. So that was, Paula said that the piece that had gone viral was actually a tango imposed on the grebe, which wasn't so interesting, but she told me to look at the piece, or suggested I looked at the piece, and also gave me permission to use the sound. Bruce, could we go to the next MP3 now? So from that, I started notating those ba 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 da 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 type of calls. The next track 2-2, which is an MP3.
Inspiration, uniting lots of things together.
So this is a little BBC interview the day before on In Tune, Radio 3, a programme that doesn't normally talk about environmental concerns.
So the musicality, different cultures, and the natural world which we are busy attempting to destroy.
Yes, and the wonderful thing about classical music is it's generally acoustically played. So I feel that it's almost like our bird music. There's that I improvised in the studio live, kicked again, and I composed it. So that's the same sound you've just been hearing in the video.
Gosh, what a haunting combination. Stevie, thank you very much indeed. Stevie Wishart, fiddle, and the hooded grebe before that. Inspiration with its tango connection, its Bach connections for the new piece that will get a world premiere tomorrow night in the Proms and Bach night. The Eton consort on John Butt, the 4 orchestral suites, and then Stevie is one of 4 composers inspired by the dance in them. Herself, Stuart McRae, Nick Mooley, and Ailey Robinson. Thank you very much indeed for doing that for us and for making us aware of the endangered species and the importance of listening to the natural world and to the bird songs. Quite a lot to teach us. Well, we have music next by someone who's got a stunning technique, say the critics, with an intellectual capacity, if you can match. This month.
So see, that's a very relevant thing to manage to get into a, Radio 3 program that doesn't normally talk about these issues. And that's what I really tried to do. And so I don't want to be egotistical about having all that in it, is actually to place it in a more unusual place than say me talking here, for example. And then I wanted to play, if you'd still bear with me with this story of the proms, I wanted to play, Corbridge, can we play a bit at the beginning and then go towards the end? Because I want you to hear it back and on. Yes, it's another MP3. So this is the actual live concert. So by now I've transferred the piece from that violin stuff. So this is the Bach, where it comes from. And again, I want to show you that it's an unusual context. And you've got 6,000 people listening to this piece. So that's also a good number to be able to share the ideas with. So that's the end of the Bach. Yes, can you show a little bit of the score? Oh no, do that afterwards. Yes, can we skip to like the last 30 seconds? This is a fugue applied to the Greek.
Our second world premiere of the evening tonight at the BBC Proms Bach Night with John Butt directing the Dunedin Consort in music by Stevie Wishart, both inspired by Bach's first orchestral suite in C major, which we heard before it, and also by the tango and the bird that we heard, the Argentine hooded grebe, an endangered species whose call conveniently matches not only the form of the tango but also the last notes of Bach's first orchestral suite, specially co-commissioned by the BBC Proms and Dunedin Consort.
So it was very lucky that also, by chance, I just couldn't believe that the grebe was in the same key as the Bach. It was totally, I said, oh my God, it's Morris in C major. So that's just a bit of the Bach score. And then Kevin Mount, who's done the artwork also for Sarah Gillespie, he did my cover. So that was from the video you saw. And then just go to the first page of the score. Next bit. Yeah, and you've got the next page, and then you've got the score for the orchestra, and the top line is the grebe song, but it's not on that particular page. So I just wanted to say that's one way that I approach this idea of bringing together my eyes experiments with nature with something that initially seemed as though they wouldn't go together, but in fact I found it was a chance to actually reach a wider audience than I would normally do with these ideas. Have I got time to talk about one other piece? Yeah. So then I went on to a more, but actually what I wanted to do in the Ardennes was spend a year just being able to listen to the dawn chorus and do what I've never been able to do, which is actually feel the seasons. So luckily for me, I was working at Dartington teaching composition, and Ex Cathedra, which is a wonderful, wonderful choir we have in Britain, directed by Geoffrey Skidmore, based in Birmingham. Every year they commission a composer to do a dawn chorus. I hadn't realised that. And I'd done a rather kind of noisy experimental hurdy-gurdy concert late night, and afterwards he came up rather tangentially and said, would I like to be their dawn chorus composer? So I said, well, yes, that could be nothing better, because I just kind of moved out of the city and I'm not doing a lot else other than listening to the dawn. So I wrote a piece called Voicing the Dawn, and my idea for it was ways that human resonances, actually when I wrote the notes today, I put human resonances to touch the avian world, but actually on the score I put to share the avian world. Can we go to number 3? Video. Yes, yes. So this is a video. It's not very good quality, doesn't matter. So this is its performance, just a bit of it, in Birmingham Cathedral, just to give you a feeling of, well, just to listen to it really. Can I turn this up a little bit? This is the blackbird. Thanks. So what I did for that piece was we recorded the dawn chorus in 2 different places in the Ardennes at the same time. I mean, I recorded many dawn choruses to kind of learn the vocabulary, but I then made the soundscape for it and mixed. Like my assistant was in Wormwood and I was in a village, so we sort of got 2 quite different habitats. And what I wanted to show mainly was the kind of the build-up of a dawn chorus, because that can make for a very nice musical form, because you generally start with one bird, it's often the blackbird, or in my case it was sometimes the chaffinch. But so I use the form of the dawn chorus to completely dictate everything that we did in the music. And can you do the next PDF? And go down a bit. So see, up a bit, sorry. So you can see the kind of list of, down more so you can see the whole page, the whole A4 page. essentially the first page of the score. No, that's the second page. Just go up to the title page. That page, yes, is a delay, I know, so it's hard. So you see, in this piece straight away, the atmosphere changed. So I can't remember what they were rehearsing before my piece. I think it was something like Monteverdi. You know, when the singers were humans. There was soprano, there were alto. They were in their normal kind of blocks of those chords. They were very humans doing a thing that humans know how to do. They came to my piece and they said, "Oh, but I'm Robin. What voice is that?" And I said, "Well, it's Robin." And, "Well, is that soprano, alto?" "Well, it's Robin." And then they got it, and then they started really enjoying it. They also had to be, each were a soloist. They had to be placed. Can you go down a few more pages where you'll see a kind of stage plan? Yeah. So I kind of placed them where I felt, I'm afraid this is kind of looking at it like that. But so I did all my work on the dawn chorus sitting outside on a flat roof, because I was very interested also. Birds can teach us so much about spatialization in our listening, because they do it so well, because they're in one place and they sing at a frequency where they kind of own that space. So say that's blackbird, and then chaffinch will start, and where he, and it is a he because it's the men who sing, the male birds who sing, you know, he would have really thought about where that was, and it was just perfect because they could both hear each other. They didn't interfere each other with each other, but you felt that they were aware of each other's presence and kind of protecting their bits, really. So this is also a very good musical phenomenon. It also meant that when the singers were performing in it, they started to feel like birds. So, you know, then when they were collecting their kids from school after the rehearsal, they said to me, "Oh, well, it was really nice because I actually noticed the blackbird in the hedge as I was walking past." So it's making all these connections and dialogues, which we're here for today, and a way of exchanging knowledge without actually changing what we do. We're just filling in the music with a different content. And it's a content that's very relevant. And it's not rocket science. I'm not having to make anyone do something different. But in this piece, I mean, it's quite tough to, and the other thing is, it's quite tough to listen to this piece because it's birdsong, and the other aspect of this is that's nice. I mean, that tango piece was okay, but it was tonal and didn't sound particularly adventurous. But this piece really stands up as a new sound. But how I communicated it and how it could be done, say, in a school workshop, is I could sort of work out this piece by listening to the dawn chorus with a birder, and he'd be talking about sounds in an incredibly specific way that I could have actually more or less notated the sound from. But his language was completely inclusive. It was like, as a silvery, I mean, Jeff Sample does this brilliantly. He paints the sound with words. He populates it with musical notes, but it's a notation that we can share. And that's what I really want to develop in my work, and actually get other composers doing this, or listeners, or whatever we call ourselves. Because I think we're at a great time when we've been stuck in this 19th century baggage, and also a very culturally defined baggage. This is also relatively culturally neutral. So when I'm doing a contemporary piece that I think stands up against other contemporary pieces that aren't based in old-fashioned harmony, and yet my method of communicating it was inclusive because I was able to use bird language to do it. So I just wanted to kind of give two rather contrasting examples of how I feel we can repopulate our contemporary musical world in a way that opens up dialogues and also makes us aware of the things that are important to us through listening. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. That was fascinating. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so very much.